Hi there, welcome to my channel. I'm sorry I've been a bit MIA from here for a while, but I am back and I am fired up and ready to go. Over the next few weeks, I would like for us to have a few conversations about things that we hold dear, things that we believe about our faith, and why we believe what we believe. I would like us to engage in a series of deconstructing and demystifying a lot of the things that we believe, okay? Why we believe what we believe. Where did these beliefs come from? Are they biblically based? Are they culturally based? Is there a distinction between my biblically based beliefs and my culturally based beliefs, and what is it that is fundamental, so that going forward we can know and be very intentional about the things that we know and the things that we believe and where those beliefs come from. The first thing I would like for us to discuss, because it has been a lot in the media and on a global scale as well as on a local scale, is the idea of social justice. There are certain Christians who, when they hear the word social justice, are so fired up and they're so stoked and so excited about, moving into action. While there are other Christians who, when they hear social justice, all they think about is they just get turned off, right? They don't want to have anything to do with it. They believe it is a mixture of faith and politics. And we know that in some ways, we never want to mix our faith and politics, particularly for religious liberty reasons. And so I want us to have that conversation. Why is social justice important? Is it even important? Is it part of our Christian faith? What is our responsibility as Christians as we go forward in matters social justice? I believe the first thing we have to do in order to have a beneficial and comprehensive discussion about this is to discuss what social justice means. What is it exactly? And I would like to proffer my own definition, which is that social justice basically surrounds the idea of even and equal distribution, fair distribution of things like wealth, things like privilege, things like opportunities within a society. So that when we are talking about a socially just community, we are talking about the fact that each and every person, regardless of where they come from, for as long as they are part of that community, so long as they live in that community, so long as they consider themselves belonging to that community, have the same opportunities, the same privileges, the same distribution of wealth or whatever social amenities there are as everyone else. So there's some kind of fairness. One person does not have more than the other, or one person does not unjustly, or I should say unfairly, take advantage of another person. Now, before I hear any talks, I am not talking about socialism, although in some ways we can have that conversation later. For right now, I'm just talking about basic fairness, okay? And as we're having that conversation, I would like to give about four other types or four other forms of social justice. The first I would like to discuss is procedural justice, okay? Procedural justice is basically what was the procedure for acquiring it, okay? So did you get it fairly? Was somebody else taken advantage of in order for you to get what it is that you have, your opportunities or your privilege or your wealth or social amenities? How did you come about it? Was it fairly acquired is what I'm saying, okay? So, for example, if you had to steal from someone to acquire what you have, then that was not procedural justice, because somebody else had to be disadvantaged for you to get the privileges or the opportunities or even the wealth that you have. Okay? The other part of it is what we call distributive justice, or in a way, economic justice. Okay? So, how were these things distributed? Okay? Remember, the other one was procedural, meaning did you follow the rules? Did you get it fairly? Okay? And this other one is distinctive in that it is more about how was it was everything distributed to begin with? Okay, what were the foundations of the distribution of that wealth, or that or those opportunities? Okay, so for example, if somebody came into a community and said, hey, I want 12 professionals. Okay, so how were those opportunities distributed? Did everybody have a fighting chance, okay, to get them? Was there undue or unfair uh, distribution? Basically, that's what it is. It's distributive justice. So did I give an opportunity to my child while I refused the opportunity to somebody who was more qualified? That is what we mean by distributive or economic justice. So we're giving economic opportunities and economic privileges to those who have basically deserved them. Okay, we are not giving others unfair advantage over another. The other one is restorative justice. This means basically that you're making right what perhaps you have made was wrong to begin with. So in a community where perhaps, and a good example is actually found in the Bible with Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was a tax collector, but when he had an encounter with Jesus, he recognized that his wealth was not fairly acquired. He used to tax the people more than what was necessary. And so what he did once he had encountered Jesus was that the Bible tells us that he returned what he had ill-gotten from the people. He returned it to them, and then also gave retribution for it, right? He restored what they had, and also even went over and above. And that's how restorative justice works. It's you trying to make right what was made wrong to begin with, what was wrong to begin with. And then we have what we call retributive justice, and this is basically punishment. It's what we have when we talk about our penal system, how we punish the people who have done wrong, people who have committed crimes and all of that. So is there justice? Is there fairness in the way that people are punished? Is the punishment commensurate with the sin or with the crime, is basically what it is. So for example, and we all know about it is not fair for a man to lose his life over a $20 bill. George Floyd, that is absolutely, it's just not fair. Okay, so that is not retributive justice. Another part of it is, like, for those who are in Kenya, it does not make sense for someone to be beaten to death just because they were found outside during a curfew that is meant to protect them against coronavirus, COVID-19. So that's what we call retributive justice. Okay, is the fact that, is the punishment commensurate with the crime? Are we doling out fair punishment that actually warrants the crime that was committed? Okay, so, and again, because we're talking about fairness and justice, are the punishments based on the crimes that are committed all given out equally, without regard to gender or color of the skin or tribe or whatever it is? That justice has to be fair. Okay, now that we have a definition for it, then what does this have to do with Christianity? What I have found most interesting, as the talks on social justice have continued, is the idea that people, and I've heard this more so from Christians, is that people do not believe that we as Christians should be involved in matters of social justice. And I would like to read from the book of Luke, chapter 4, and particularly verse 18. This is a passage by Jesus. He had just been baptized. He had literally just come out from the wilderness, having been there for 40 days and 40 nights. He had just been tempted by the devil and overcome his temptation, meaning he did not fall into the trap. And after that, the Bible tells us from verse 14, Luke chapter 4 and verse 14, that Jesus went to Galilee, and as news was about him spread, that he began to teach in the synagogues. And this one time he went into Nazareth, and it was on a Sabbath, and he went before the synagogue, and he started reading from the Bible. It is interesting that this is the first time the Bible tells us that this is when he began his ministry, and these were literally the first recorded words that he gave as he was beginning his ministry. So Luke chapter 4 and verse 18 says, I will begin from verse 17. It says, the scroll of the prophet Isaiah, and he stood up to read. The scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. Unrolling it, he found the place where it is written, meaning he was intentional about what he was reading. He was given a scroll. He went all the way to Isaiah and came specifically to this passage. So we need to pay attention to what it is he was saying. And Jesus says, the Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he, the Lord, has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to release the oppressed, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. I want us to think about those groups of people. He says he has been anointed to preach good news to the poor, to proclaim freedom for the prisoners, to recover sight for the blind, and to release the oppressed. All those are groups of people that would not necessarily be prominent people in the society. Those would be the people that were looked down upon. When we think about it, he says good news to the poor. Why are the people poor? Okay. Proclaim freedom for the prisoners. Why were the people imprisoned? Recovery for sight to the blind. Those are people who can't even see. Okay. And to release the oppressed. What was oppressing them? Given the definition that we have of social justice, the idea that everybody has an equal opportunity, or at least a fair shot at getting the social amenities and the social opportunities and privileges and distribution of whatever social wealth there may be. Okay, social and economic wealth, I'll even add that. If that is our definition of social justice, then we can fairly say that what Jesus is saying is that his ministry was particularly to right a wrong, to bring fairness and justice to us, a system that was not in any way so. And that is why he says specifically, as he begins his ministry, that he has been anointed to preach good news to the poor, to proclaim freedom for the prisoners, and to recover sight for the blind, and to release the oppressed. There are so many reasons why Jesus may have begun this, but I would like to think, and I would like to proffer that as a suggestion for your consideration, that perhaps Christ's ministry, when we really look at it, was all about righting wrongs that were in the society at that time. And if that is what Jesus wanted to do for that time, how much more are we, those who proclaim to be his followers, how much more should we also continue with his work that he began so many years ago? If we can believe that he is gone to prepare a place for us, then while we are waiting, I sincerely believe, and I ask you to ask the Lord to give you clarity on this matter. I sincerely believe that it is our imperative. In fact, I believe it is our mandate as Christians to continue to fight for fairness and justice in our worlds, in our countries, in our nations, in the entire world. That is our mandate as Christians. It is not by accident that Christ began his ministry with these particular words. He did not come to condemn the world, as John 3:17 says. Perhaps when he talks about the blind, he came so that we who have been so blinded by the injustices that have been in the world, that we are so used to them, perhaps part of his ministry was opening up our eyes. And for those whose eyes are already opened, I beseech you, I ask you to go a step further and educate not just yourself but others as to why exactly our mandate as Christians is to fight for social justice in our communities. I pray that this will be something that you will consider, that we will be more about being Christians and not just about doing Christianity. Thank you and be blessed.